Yes, go.
Moet ik beginnen?
Ja.
Welcome everybody on this webinar. It's in these times of the pandemic, it's the only way we can inform you about the Mekong Delta plans which are there. And the aim of this webinar is to inform the participants about the challenges and opportunities of Mekong Delta based on the Dutch-Vietnamese cooperation. And launch in the pilot and the Mekong Delta of the cooperation between the three top sectors: agri-food, logistics, horticulture, and starting materials. My name is Luc Hermans. I've been chairman of the top sector horticulture and starting materials since during 10 years, and I visited several times Vietnam and also the Delta. So I'm very interested in what's happening there, and I try to bring this webinar to a good end. We will have also the opportunity to ask questions. You can ask questions, and that means that I will suggest that all the questions we will take on the end of the webinar in a special question and answer time. So please, will you keep your questions till the end of the meeting so that we can have a very good way of doing this webinar. So I think it's the best we can do now is to start, and to start with the block number 1, and that is the Mekong Delta Integrated Regional Plan for the period 2021-2030, and with a vision and the plan to 2050. And for this, I will give the floor to Ian Hamilton. Ian, the floor is yours.
Okay, so good morning to those of you in the Netherlands, and good evening to those of you in Vietnam. So this presentation is the overall strategy and potential business opportunities that are arising from the Mekong Delta Integrated Regional Plan, or MDIRP. Now, this is very interesting. This is the first regional plan that's been produced under the law of planning, so there is a lot of interest in it, in the approach, and also some of the projects which are coming out of this. And this plan is designed to integrate planning of the various ministries and the provinces and the various sectors. So Royal Haskoning DHV has been producing this plan for the last year. We're expecting that approval will be given by the Prime Minister by the end of this year. So it's very, very soon, and things should come out of it very quickly after that. Now, in terms of our regional strategy, the main thing is to manage the challenges, and there are many challenges. There's also a lot of potential in the region, but certainly a lot of external challenges in terms of climate change, sea level rise, salinity. We're not sure what's happening with the upstream dams in terms of water flows, in terms of sediment. There are a number of internal issues as well. So certainly we're suffering from subsidence. We have a lot of pollution issues, groundwater extraction. In terms of trend, the economy is quite flat. There is a lot more potential. We know that this is a very dynamic and very fertile place. It produces a great proportion of the rice, the seafood, the fruits of Vietnam, but there is a lot more potential. And this is reflected in the fact that the population is very flat, and a lot of the able-bodied and younger people are actually leaving the area. So you'll see here the land which we're expecting to be below mean sea level by 2050. It's possibly 50% as a result of subsidence and sea level rise. Now, you in the Netherlands know this very well, but it's something quite new for many parts of Vietnam, and it's something where we need to take action and certainly manage the situation. So our key considerations throughout this have been, number one, to protect people. in terms of addressing climate change, addressing flooding, for example. Improving livelihoods in terms of farmers' incomes, for example, are very low. And a lot of the benefits from farming actually accrue to people outside the Delta. We'd like to make sure that more of the benefits come to the Delta itself. In terms of balanced regional development, we'd like to share some of the economic activity around so that it's not only focused in Ho Chi Minh and the center in Can Tho, but other parts of the Delta also benefit. And also in terms of the environment, trying to reduce pollution and have more of a sustainable development in future. And what we want to do is to create value. So the first thing that we would propose to do is to have a number of higher value crops instead of rice in future. So more fruit and vegetables to be grown and more aquaculture. But this will require more farmer support. They can't do this by themselves. And we also need to improve the practices that they're undertaking at the moment to make them more sustainable. Now, once they've produced more and better varied and higher quality produce, we also need to consolidate that produce and process it within the Delta itself, rather than, as I said, getting other people to do this outside. So we're planning a number of agro-industrial hubs spread throughout the Delta, which will be used to add value. Initially, it'll be mainly for export of goods, but over time, as people get richer, it will be more important to also think about importing and of goods as well. Our plan also includes improved transportation, so both inland waterways and roads. This will be phased over time in conjunction with the hubs as they come online. And we'll also need to upgrade some of the ports. There's a lot of inland ports and seaports that need to be transformed to take this new way of working. And then finally, there's 4 integrated parts, and this water management. So selected protection of certain areas. So we have one area which is going to be freshwater only. We need to look at improving water quality throughout in terms of aquaculture, and also to make sure there's plenty of drinking water for people to use, and also managing flood risk in certain areas. That'll be also very important. So that's the integrated strategy, 4 parts which need to be developed together. Now you'll see there that we have the current situation in terms of land use. It's mostly on the left there is like a greeny yellow color, mostly rice. And the policy of the government at the moment is trying to encourage rice down into the salty areas as well by putting a number of projects in and making sure that fresh water goes down there. We're proposing that that doesn't happen in future. What we're proposing is that we have a guaranteed freshwater zone to the north, which is smaller than it is at the moment. And the remaining areas in that freshwater zone are replaced with fruit and vegetables. And we're also proposing in the saline areas that there be much more aquaculture, but that it be more environmentally friendly than it is at the moment. And then there'll be an area in between, which will be an intermediate zone, a brackish zone of fruit and vegetables and aquaculture. And in the dry season, it will be that. And then in the wet season, also rice. So this is the area in the north, a smaller guaranteed freshwater zone, less rice, more fruit and vegetables, the aquaculture towards the south and around the coast. Also, there will be an increase in the area of protected areas. That's something we'd like to do in conjunction with Resolution 120, which is one of the legal backbones of this, to try to have more forested area, especially mangrove. And also the area in between, which would adapt over the seasons. It will be a fresh brackish zone. So this would change over seasons and also over time as climate change increases and more salinity goes up the delta. So you'll see the one on the left there, that shows the pale blue area is the area which is basically drinking water. And then as you go to the blue areas, this is the areas which is a little bit more brackish. And then as you go to the coast, this is going to be more saline. So the plans are for a number of hubs, 7 hubs. In the middle there, the star is Can Tho, which is basically the regional capital. This is the dynamic regional center for the economy and administration. 7 hubs spread around the delta, each focusing on 1 or 2 crops. The idea of, as I said, the spreading out the hubs so that there'll be more balanced development, more development to around the place so that more people will benefit from economic activity. And there we're putting in on the right-hand side, you'll see a road plan and also some improvements to some of the canals. The red color, the dotted lines, is the first phase over the first 5 to 10 years. And the orange color would be the infrastructure, the roads for the next 5-year or 10-year period. So this is quite a large investment proposed for the coming 10, 20, 30 years to make sure that we improve accessibility throughout the Delta. So this general improvement in accessibility will enable more tourism as well, so that it's quicker to get to places than it is at the moment. We're also proposing that there's going to be a more emphasis on power, and some of you might be interested in that, especially renewables. So certainly offshore wind activity and onshore solar power would replace the proposed coal, which is the current plan for the government, and that will change over time to renewables and also gas. So the hubs, I think that those in the Netherlands will know that this is more of a sort of a synergies and a mix of things in these areas. So there'll be services, there'll be processing, focus on things like quality control, on terms of cold stores. Containerization is very important. We have very little containerization at the moment. We see this as being a one-stop shop where the customs checks will be done so that there's no need for handling at other places. Hubs will become an integral part of each urban area and each provincial centre and become a real dynamic driver of growth in those areas in future. So an integrated strategy, all of those coming together to make sure that the area prospers, individuals prosper as well for the future. And then there's one element that I particularly would like to mention, because it's been mentioned that some people will be very interested in solid waste proposals. Now, we're proposing that a number of potential interprovincial sites be established in terms of sanitary landfills, because the current system is that many of the provinces have their own landfills, but they don't really have enough municipal solid waste to make this viable. So we're thinking that if we have a number of interprovincial sites, you'll be able to do things like waste to energy and be able to handle things like hazardous waste, especially from things like aquaculture and hospital waste. So we're expecting that with economies of scale, you're going to need at least 300,000 tons of municipal solid waste to make this viable. So that very quickly is my proposals and ideas for the plan and some of the potential projects that there might be for the future. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Ian Hamilton. It was very interesting to see the complexity of the whole program, but I think it's a good overview about the challenges. I already mentioned in the beginning of my introduction that the questions we will keep till the end of the webinar so that all the questions can be taken one again. So thank you very much for your introduction. And then now we'll go to the block number 2, the opportunities in the agri-food, horticulture and logistics sector of the Mekong Delta. And for that, I would like to give the floor to Siebe van Wijk. Siebe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luc. Good morning in the Netherlands and good evening in Southeast Asia. A few months ago, the Dutch Agriculture Councillor in Vietnam asked me to share my experiences as Dutch entrepreneur in the Mekong Delta. And that's what I'm going to present to you about the opportunities which there are. Next slide, please. So I'll start briefly to give a background about myself and Fresidio. Then I'll show you the enormous successful rise of Vietnam, the changes that happened in the Mekong Delta, but then also all the work that still needs to be done. And I will use the biggest sector in the Mekong Delta, the shrimp sector, as an example. Based on that example, we'll look at business opportunities which there are in the other sectors. Next slide. I'm an agriculture economist from Wageningen University, and I started to work in Vietnam from 2001 and moved there in 2004. Together with my partner Irma Manting, we founded Fresidio in 2006 and then later set up an office in Dalat, in Ho Chi Minh City and Can Tho. So for the past 15 years, I've had the opportunity to live in all the key areas of Vietnam. With Fresidio, I've been working on many agriculture subsectors, but we never had a client which was interested in fruit. And that's why we decided to start a second company called the Fruit Republic, which over time developed into one of the leading fruit and vegetable producers and exporters in the domestic market. Next slide. Fresidio is a consulting and R&D firm, and we help our clients in the sustainable production and marketing of food. We have offices, 4 in Vietnam, an R&D farm in Vietnam, and a few years ago we opened an office in Yangon. Most of our projects are multidisciplinary, so that's why we have a multidisciplinary team of consultants, 60 staff, who can give advice on every step on the chain. Next slide. The rise of Vietnam. When I came to Vietnam the first time was 2001. Before I'd worked mostly in East Africa, and then Vietnam was quite a different experience. There was a lot of entrepreneurship in the country. I mean, the agriculture sector in either East Africa or Southeast Asia. I mean, farmers everywhere in the world are hardworking and quite entrepreneurial, but there was much more happening in the country. Next slide. In 1990, the GDP was just 6.5 billion, and the Dutch economy at that time was about 50 times larger than the Vietnamese economy. Now in 2019, the gap between the Netherlands and Vietnam, still the Dutch economy is larger, but it's only 3 times compared to 50 times in 1990. So Vietnam has had one of the fastest growing economy for the past 30 years of all countries in the world. Normally China and India get all the attention, and few people know that here's a country with close to 100 million people developing very well. Next slide. When I came to Vietnam in 2001, there was just an export value of $15 billion, and the imports were more or less the same. It was a negative trade balance. Vietnam joined WTO in 2007, which at first led to more negative trade balance, but over time Vietnam is now having a positive trade balance, and quite a diversified economy. The Vietnamese economy is very open, which I'll show you in the next slide. First, in agriculture exports, Vietnam really has become an agriculture powerhouse. In a lot of commodities, especially, Vietnam is in the top 3 producers in the world. Cashew nuts is #1, frozen fish fillets, it's #2, rice is #3 in the world, coffee is #3 in the world, shrimps it's #4, in fruits, pitahaya, it's #1, rubber, it's a world player. So, and this all happened in a period of just 20 years, and almost all of this development was done by smallholder farmers. The average farm size in Vietnam is just ½ a hectare. And for all these commodities, they are coming from the millions and millions of smallholders. Next slide. There did not only happen a lot on the exports, also a lot happened on the imports. And that also will give you a bit of an idea that, well, they're producing a lot of crops and livestock, but what inputs are they using for it? If you, for example, look at pesticides on the graph on the left, you see that in 2001, Vietnam imported just around $100 million of pesticides. But now in 2019, Vietnam is importing almost $1 billion of pesticides. So to give you a reference, Vietnam exports of rice is about $1 billion. And that's already being offset with all the imports just for pesticides alone. But also fertilizers imports increase a lot. But in the past few years, more and more fertilizer companies were set up in Vietnam, so more and more of the production is domestic, but also agriculture machinery, all these things are upcoming. If you look to the livestock related inputs, it's even more dramatic what has happened. Corn imports from just a few $1 million to more than $2 billion of imports. Also in antibiotics, you've seen an enormous increase. Next slide. Besides inputs, Vietnam is also importing a lot of food. So Vietnam is also an interesting market destination for producers from all over the world. 10 years ago, you could hardly find an apple in the supermarkets. Now the shelf space to apples is enormous. Also products like grapes and other fruits are really growing very, very fast. You see cashew nuts. Hey, Vietnam is one of the biggest exporters of cashew nuts. How can it be such a big importer? More than $1 billion of cashew nuts imports. This is related that Vietnam imports a lot of cashew nuts raw material out of mostly Africa, and then they process it in Vietnam and then re-export. You also see this happening in shrimps. So Vietnam is a big shrimp exporter, but they don't have enough shrimps themselves. So they're importing a lot of shrimps out of India, especially, and then process it in Vietnam and then re-export it. Next slide. So that's a general picture of how dynamic the Vietnamese economy is. And I think that's a very important factor for entrepreneurs, Dutch entrepreneurs, if they want to decide to invest in Vietnam. Now let's zoom in on the Mekong Delta. Next slide. Mekong Delta is more or less the same size as the Netherlands, which has the main city Can Tho, about 4 million hectares. But with a big difference from the Netherlands, 73% of the population is still rural. The size of the Mekong Delta economy is about 40% of the national GDP. Next slide. The Mekong Delta is very, very important for the Vietnamese agriculture sector. Almost 60% of Vietnamese rice production comes from the Mekong Delta. For aquaculture, 70% of the production of Vietnam is originating from the Mekong Delta. Fruits, 40%. Vegetables 25%, livestock is smaller. So we saw in the previous presentation from Ian that the Mekong Delta should switch more from rice to other crops, but farmers already have been doing that enormously. Next slide. If you look at for example, rice, the area of rice, the harvested area was growing until 2000, let's say 12, 14, and after that the area has gone down. First of all, farmers are switching more and more to other crops. So even in a province of Dong Thap, which is kind of was in the previous presentation shown that should have a rice focused orientation, there you see a lot of farmers now switching from rice to fruits. Also aquaculture, there's an enormous increase. I'll go into that detail later. Fruits just developed from around 100,000 hectare to already 300,000 hectare. Livestock, there is some development in the Mekong Delta, mostly in poultry and pigs, but there's more growth happening in other areas in poultry and pigs than in the Mekong Delta. Next slide. Challenges, I'll not go into much detail there because the previous presentation already spoke about it. Salinity intrusion, very, very big issue, especially in the dry season. So let's say from January till May in the dry season, with the pressure from land going down, sea level going up, and less water coming through the Mekong rivers because more and more dams are being built in China and in neighboring countries like Laos. And this is a big problem in the dry season. Next slide. Now I'm going to zoom in on shrimp farming. Next slide. Just to take a look at these numbers. If you compare the total aquaculture production in the Netherlands with Vietnam in 2000, it was on par. But then 20 years later, the shrimp production in Vietnam has grown to more than 600,000 tons, generating $3.3 billion and employing more than almost 1 million people in the rural areas, but also employing a lot of people in the factories. There are 500 processing factories in the Mekong Delta, and this also explains why they're importing a lot of raw material, because they cannot get enough out of the Mekong Delta. They're even importing volume out of India. Next slide. A lot of it's a lot of the shrimp farming grows in production is yes, by opening more shrimp farms, but at the same time also the farming systems have changed. On the left picture you see a mangrove shrimp farm, which is more or less farmers were trapping shrimps there and then waiting for them to be harvested, resulting in about half a ton per hectare per year. And this was not giving people enough income, so they started to intensify, where they're now producing 600 to 150 tons per hectare per year. And you see that on the picture on the right. Next slide. This was all going quite well until, let's say, from 2010 of a peak productivity of about, this is the average, about 5 tons per hectare, when a lot of shrimp mysteriously started to die and before they were at the right size, so-called early mortality syndrome. Next slide. Yes. So you see that based on our calculations, if they would have developed a sustainable shrimp farming system, which could have stayed at the same level as 2010, it would have been more than $3 billion of marketable shrimps, and Vietnam would have not have to rely on imports from other countries. Next slide. Well, the Vietnamese farmers are very entrepreneurial, very innovative. So they were not just waiting and seeing what was happening, they're trying to really innovate. So one of the things they did was covering the pond, so there was less sunshine, so there will be less growth of algae in the pond. They put in pedal wheels to put in oxygen and even more modern aeration systems. They set up sludge removal so that the water quality would be better, and they started to invest in automated feeders. Next slide. But we also believe that there's still a lot that can be done. And one of the things that we as Versidio have been doing with our aquaculture team and several of our partners is to develop a low-cost pond cleaning device, which could be used by smallholder farmers. This machine filters the water, adds oxygen, so that it's almost like a floating lung for the farmer. So if he has an area of a pond of 1,000 square meter, this device will give him the same results as if he would have 2,000 square meter. We have developed it, tested it, so we're at the prototype phase, and we're now trying to bring it to the next stage where we can produce more of these devices and see if we can develop a kind of an access to finance model where smaller farmers could lease such a device and help to improve their productivity in a more sustainable way. Next slide. Business opportunities in the Mekong Delta. I think tomorrow will be, you see a big feed factory of the Heus in the Mekong Delta. Tomorrow there'll be a presentation by the Heus about their experiences. Next slide. But whatever sector you look in the Mekong Delta, they're all the same kind of issues, and at the same time this means opportunities if you can provide solutions. Vietnamese farmers use too much of all inputs. It was quite a change for me when I came from East Africa, where always the issue was there was not enough nutrients being added to the farming system. It was all about negative nutrient balances. In Vietnam, for sure, it's the other way around. There's far too much an unbalanced fertilizer use, which is costing a lot of money. There's too much pesticides in a non-rational way, too much water, too much feeds in the animal sector, too much antibiotics, and lack of good genetics. A lot of the input companies and technology companies are purely sales driven, organizing parties with the farmers, drinking beer with them, and trying to push sales very aggressively. Instead of helping farmers, giving them good advice so that in the end they will keep using your input and your technology. A lot of the inputs and technology and solutions that are being provided to farmers are very short term. Next slide. So we believe that there's a lot of interesting business opportunity in inputs and technologies in the Mekong Delta, but you need to take the Vietnamese farmer very serious. It's a big potential market. Yes, they're small, but they're entrepreneurial. If the Vietnamese farmers see the value added and have done their farm economic calculation, which they do, and they see the result is good, and normally they will calculate with a payback period of just 2 years. They're not going to wait 6 years to see an impact. But if you have that, you have a big potential markets. But it requires you to undertake applied R&D. Be sure what your value added is. Train your staff, focus on providing the farmers the best advice and not focusing on your short-term sales. Set up demonstration farms, links farmers to the change. And quite some Dutch companies have been doing it successfully in Vietnam. Later, Maaike from ISESI will tell more about it. They've been one of the first who are doing applied R&D, developing technologies for farmers in the Mekong Delta very successfully. But also companies like De Heus, and also Beo, another seed company, Nutreco, Skretting, Rijkswaan. These are all Dutch companies which in the past 2 years are seeing the potential of Vietnam, investing in Vietnam, and taking all the above steps. Next slide. So there are a lot of business use opportunities along the chain, not only on the input side, where I just given some examples. But if you look in aquaculture, there are very few professional hatcheries, nurseries. Also in the fruit sector, there's 300,000 hectares of fruits, but there's no professional nursery. Most farmers, after 2 years, 30% of their fruit trees die. So there is a lot of political emphasis on, yes, we need to develop fruit value chains in the Mekong Delta, but how to do that? And one of the things where we need to start will be with good nurseries. Also further down the chain in processing, distribution and logistics, I'm very much looking forward to plans from Royal Haskoning to have a container terminal in the Mekong Delta, because now around 100,000 containers, although Ian mentioned that containerization is not yet so far, but already 100,000 containers per year of seafood and fruits are moving out of the Mekong Delta, driven straight through Ho Chi Minh City to Cat Lai Port or Kai Mep. How great would it be if we could just put the container on board in Cante, and from there we go directly to Singapore, and from there to Rotterdam. This was my presentation. If you want to know more, you can always contact me about the opportunities that are along the chain in the Mekong Delta. Thank you.
Thank you, Siebe, for your introduction, a very interesting introduction, and it gives a good view also with your own experiences in the Vietnam area. So I think it gives a good opportunity for the cooperation between the Dutch farmers and the Vietnamese farmers. And what you said, I think it's very interesting, and it gives very good opportunities for improve the position and the production of the agriculture and horticultural sector in Vietnam, and especially in the Mekong Delta. So thank you very much. I would like to go to the next phase of our webinar. That's the interview with the Dutch ambassador in Vietnam, Elsbeth Akkerman, and I will ask her some questions. Now I think it's the moment to have an interview together with Elsbeth Akkerman, the Dutch ambassador in Vietnam. Welcome. And Aad Veenman, the chairman of the top sector logistics in the Netherlands. Thank you very much for joining this interview, because it's I think it's a big project, the Mekong Delta project in Vietnam. And can you tell something about it, Elsbeth, about the importance and the interesting of this project for the Dutch entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I gladly do, and thank you very much for having me in this this interview. So the Netherlands and Vietnam have long-lasting bilateral relations, more than 45 years diplomatic relations, but I guess the business relations go back more. And in 2019, when Prime Minister Rutte visited Vietnam in the framework of a big trade mission, the bilateral relationship between the Netherlands and Vietnam was upgraded to a comprehensive partnership in which two strategic partnerships figure very prominently. One of them is climate and water management, and the other pillar of the cooperation is agriculture and food safety. And So far, in the area of water, in the area of agriculture, but also in the nexus between the sectors, the Netherlands has already built quite a strong foothold, and the Netherlands companies that are positioned and working here have a good reputation, not only in doing efficient and effective profitable business, but they're also very well known for the fact that they busy themselves with responsible and sustainable business. And for that reason, during the trade mission in 2019, the Netherlands' knowledge, expertise and reputation also on doing sustainable business in the field of agriculture, between the two prime ministers, so Prime Minister Fook and Prime Minister Rutte, it was decided to conclude an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, on the agricultural transformation of the Mekong Delta. So the Mekong Delta is in the south of Vietnam. It looks actually, for those who've never been in Vietnam, it really looks like the Netherlands, but instead of grass, there is a lot of rice. And the rice production is actually one of the biggest challenges. It's triple rice, and it's not the most efficient, not the most sustainable produce. And what the agricultural transformation program aims for, also with an eye to the future of the importance of agriculture in Vietnam, is to transition from rice crops to more profitable and more sustainable rice crops, amongst others fruits, vegetables, aquaculture. And there, I guess, there's a room for a lot of opportunities for the Dutch trade and industry, who are busying themselves in agriculture, but also in transport and logistics, warehousing. So what we are doing in Vietnam at the moment is promoting this agricultural transformation program as a Dutch supported program that is owned by the Vietnamese government, and that leaves room for Dutch investors, Dutch traders, as well as other foreign investors and foreign traders. But first and foremost, of course, we look at what the Netherlands has to offer for well, the challenges that Vietnam sees in the Mekong Delta.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a good brief overview of what's going on in Vietnam for the Mekong Delta project. It's quite a large project. You mentioned already the water and the agriculture, the horticultural sector. And at the end, you also said it is very important to have a good logistics system. And that's why we ask Aad Veeman, the chairman of the Dutch top sector logistics, to give his view on the project in the Mekong Delta. The floor is yours, Aad. You have to unmute.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the conference, and I would like to add a few words to the words of the ambassador on the topic of the logistics. The logistics are always an enabling factor for any type of business, and particularly in horticulture and agriculture. It's between 8 and 15% of the total turnover is in logistics. But also, if you go from growing a specific harvesting activities and you go to added value products or products with higher value, then it's more important to have an efficient logistic chain. And also the transportation plays an important role. So the first part is always how to reduce waste, and the second is how to economize the system and how to optimize the logistics by warehousing and transportation. And for that reason, it's of vital importance that the logistics are part of the chain, also in combination with horticulture and food and agri. And also in the big challenges for Vietnam, I think they can play an important role to get a better system, a more efficient system, and also a more sustainable logistic systems in line with the development of the food and agriculture and horticulture development.
Thank you very much. I think you also give a good idea about the importance of logistics for the development of the Mekong Delta project in the future. And I think, what do you think, Mr. Ambassador, from the further need to make the Dutch-Vietnamese cooperation a success? Is the webinar like this? It's like that, but it's also, I think, it's important for the entrepreneurs to have an overseen about the concrete plans in which they can participate. Can you give some ideas about that?
Sure, I think seeing is believing. That is, I guess, that's a big truth. And ideally, we would host you in Vietnam, host you and the representatives of the top sectoren for a dedicated mission to show you what the challenges are, but also where in those challenges lie the opportunities. But now we cannot do that, so we will have to do with a webinar, and potentially dedicated to some sectors. We could do some dedicated film and photo and interview work, perhaps as a means of getting the Dutch entrepreneurs in touch with their potential counterparts. But what we're also doing now is, together with the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and you, is establishing a forum where the company representatives, but also the sector representatives, or the top sector representatives, are able to find each other and exchange there on what is needed in the Delta to change crops and develop towards a more smart and sustainable agriculture on the one hand side, and what the Netherlands has to offer on the other hand side, so that we are able to match make between needs and what we have on offer, and at the same time also to match make between Dutch entrepreneurs and businesses and their Vietnamese counterparts.
Thank you. So I think the same question for Aad Veeman. What do you think will be necessary for companies in your sector for participating in this project?
I think also in line with the words of the ambassador, I think this is an interesting challenge where you have to combine different sectors, so water, agriculture, horticulture, and advanced logistics. So you have to make that work by meeting, by setting examples, by exchanging view, and I also believe that the idea of a forum is a very interesting part, because you need to energize also the cooperation between the cross-sectoral activities, but also the public-private part of it. And you can only do that by meeting, by exchanging view, and see where one can help the other, and how can we exchange and develop the business at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's an important thing for all the participants in this webinar and for all the entrepreneurs, is that they know that we will establish a platform in which they can be informed, and they can exchange ideas and can exchange experiences, and also have direct contact with I think the embassy in Vietnam, so that they can get the latest information and the best information they need, and they can see where exactly will be the possibilities for their companies to start business in Vietnam, and to support the Vietnamese government in exploring the new plans for the Mekong Delta. So may I thank you very much for your interview and the introduction for this webinar, and let's go to the webinar. Thank you very much.
Gladly done. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think it's time now for the further introduction of the program, and that means that we are going now to an interview with a few of the members of the Dutch entrepreneurs who already do business in Vietnam. And I will give the floor to Peter van Berchem, Vice Chairman of the Dutch Vietnamese Horti Business Platform, for an interview with Maaike Groot from East West Seeds. So, and also with Peter van Berchem. I give the floor to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar as part of the virtual trade mission to Southeast Asia, organized by the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. The webinar today will be about the Mekong Delta in Vietnam and the experiences of Dutch companies active in the horticulture sector. I'm glad that today we have two guests, being Maaike Groot of East West Seeds and Peter van Berchem, Managing Director of Gacon Horticulture Projects. Shortly introducing Maaike, you are Manager Public Affairs and member of the Supervisory Board of East West Seeds. Well, East West Seeds is one of the largest vegetable seeds companies in the world, active in Asia since 1982. It's an honor to have you here, Maaike. And on my left side, Peter, as said, Managing Director of Gacon. Gacon Horticulture Projects, active in greenhouse construction and supplying turnkey projects globally. And furthermore, Peter, you are the Vice Chairman of the Netherlands Vietnam Horti Business Platform. Starting with you, Maaike. So maybe you can shortly elaborate a bit more about East West Seeds and your presence in Vietnam and your experiences in this country, especially in the Mekong Delta region.
Thank you, Matthias. Southeast Asia is for us the key region where we work. We have our headquarters in Bangkok, and since 1997 we are active in Vietnam. We have 120 local employees run from our Vietnamese headquarters close to Ho Chi Minh City. We work in all regions of Vietnam, but the Mekong Delta is key. It is a very large area, and it's considered to be the largest cultivation area of the country. Mm-hmm. It's approximately 40,000 kilometers, and it's also the biggest area for the cultivation of vegetable and fruits. Also, the climate is hot, it's humid, typical tropical climate, and we developed the varieties that are suitable for this region.
So what kind of varieties are you particularly supplying in this region?
We have a lot of different crops and varieties in Vietnam, and in the Mekong Delta we see that's especially our varieties like pumpkins, peppers, bitter gourds, papayas, and also sweet corn are very popular and have a large market potential.
Yeah, so these are both open field crops as well as for indoor cultivation?
No, basically we develop varieties for open fields cultivation. Okay. The majority of farmers in Vietnam works in open field. Most are smallholder farmers, so they don't have the opportunities to invest in high-tech greenhouses. We do develop varieties that are suitable for net house indoor cultivation. Yeah. So it's a very basic, low-tech way of indoor cultivation.
Yeah, but still, it's some kind of form of protection.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And what has been the key lesson learned from your organization perspective?
Well, the Mekong Delta is an area which is huge potential. Actually, we are still working on our market share in this region. Mm-hmm. There's about 100 seed companies active in the Mekong Delta. But it's also a region with a lot of challenges. The Mekong Delta faces changes from climate. So that means that the potential cultivation area is being reduced. Farmers are dealing with drought, with salinated soil. So we see that working on this and trying to provide solutions for them to develop sustainable agriculture that deals with these issues can give farmers a better opportunity for a better livelihood, but also gives us an opportunity to market our varieties that fit in this region.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Mike. I will come back to you shortly. Maybe giving the floor to Peter. Can you elaborate a bit about the platform you have initiated and why you have chosen for Vietnam and particularly the Mekong Delta region?
Yeah, thank you. The platform, we started the platform in the beginning of 2019 with the idea of doing projects, commercial projects in Vietnam, in horticulture areas, and making strong working relations with Vietnamese partners. So the platform worked with members, Dutch members and Vietnamese members. And what we try to establish is we bring in Dutch technology to Vietnam and try to get the Vietnamese horticulture on the next level. And that suits what you were saying, especially Mekong Delta is one of our interests regions, because there's a lot of horticulture. It's close to a very big city, where a lot of people are living, where all that people has to eat. And it's a challenge to get fresh and security food to the city, to grow vegetables or flowers or whatever you want to grow there. Because what you already mentioned, the climate, if you compare that with the region of Dalat, for example, where on a sea level of 1,000 meters, where the temperatures are much lower and it's much easier to grow, for example, tomatoes or flowers or other things. But especially in that area of the Mekong Delta, there is a challenge, and there are also a lot of opportunities to grow fresh food and fresh flowers.
Yeah. So your platform is constituting a number of Dutch companies, all active in the different steps of the value chain. Why did you choose this approach? So what is the advantage of combining forces?
Vietnam is a country where the economy is growing, but the level of horticulture is still low. And what we try to achieve is to bring in Dutch technology and Dutch knowledge into Vietnam. And we need, therefore, not only technical companies, but also seed companies and growers and all kinds of companies. So, and if we work then together with governmental organizations and try to set up programs from knowledge to knowledge, then I think we have a better chance to establish, at the end, commercial projects as well, because at the end of the day, that's our goal.
The Netherlands is, of course, internationally known for its horticulture experience. What we have developed as an industry in the Netherlands is really top level. How would you perceive the developments in Vietnam, and which lessons learned from the Netherlands would you consider to deploy also in Vietnam for the years ahead?
Yeah, we cannot start here with our high-level equipment, what we have with the glass house completely computerized or everything. That's not possible because the people cannot afford it, and the investments are too big. But to get the horticulture on the next level, like what you said, now most of the horticulture is outside, but bring it to an inside with some screens, with some small water systems to control the climate better, you can improve your revenues per square meter a lot and get more security in your food as well. And that's what we want to achieve with some education, with all kinds of things to get the complete region on a high level. That's also a challenge to improve that.
Yeah.
And what we also want to do is try to do some post-harvest management to get the products faster to the consumers, to the end consumers. If that takes too long, it's not fresh anymore. It doesn't matter if it are flowers or food, so there's a lot of waste also then.
Yeah.
So if you can improve that, and what we see is that the people are very eager to learn and they're very interested in doing it. Of course, like everywhere, money is a problem. Investors and the government want to put money in it, yes or no. That's the challenge, of course.
Yeah. So what you're telling is that the full value chain approach, including post-harvest, is relevant. And I also hear you saying about, let's say, the level of technical assistance, so the knowledge of the local employees. Maybe, Mike, from your perspective, we know that East West Seeds is very active in cooperating with farmers. Could you share some views about your operations in Vietnam, and particularly on technical assistance, your cooperation with farmers in order to improve that to a higher level?
Yes. As Peter described, farmers in the Mekong Delta are also looking for other ways of cultivation, cultivating different crops, also seeking linkage to the markets. So that's where we try to work with them. We've also collaborated in projects together with the local Vietnamese government, with farmer unions, in order to set up projects where we train farmers in starting vegetable production instead of rice production, especially because climate change has its effects. It's a very interesting alternative for farmers to change from rice to sweet corn production, for example. And these projects were successful because the crop cycles of vegetables are much shorter than for rice, and also it takes much less fresh water than rice production would. So we see that training farmers also shows them the potential of shifting crops, and it also has an effect on their environment. If one farmer does well, he is a great example for his neighbor. So we see that these projects accumulate and get a larger audience and a scale. We also see that farmers have trouble linking to the markets, as Peter described. So we also try to help them to link up with traders who bring the fresh produce to the markets. We've also worked with Wageningen University. They've done research to see which crops are suitable for this climate, but also for a soil which is increasingly salinated. So, but not only vegetables, also fruits, because the Mekong Delta is also increasingly producing fruits, not only for the region itself, but with quality going up, it also has a larger export potential. But Wageningen University is also researching how to link the production better to the markets and see where we can play a role. And it's interesting to see that also in Vietnam, they employ the typical model like the Dutch diamond, where government tries to engage with farmers, with companies, and also with universities to set up models, because they are fully aware of the issues that the Mekong Delta is facing. Yeah, so technical assistance organized by your own company is important, collaboration with universities, both from the Netherlands in this case and with Vietnam. How do you organize this? Do you have extension workers, or how do you engage with these farmers in the field? Well, what we see is trying to convince farmers into adopting new techniques. Cultivation techniques takes a lot of time and attention. So we have our teams that go out into the field and make weekly visits to farmers to assist them with their questions. We do see that, however, in the Mekong Delta, there are a lot of young farmers who are in general quite open to change. They seem a little less risk averse as compared to people in the north and the center of Vietnam. So in general, they are open to trying new crops and to also adapt their ways of cultivation. We see that, of course, we have a lot of knowledge in the Netherlands on very intensive horticulture. Yeah. We cannot use that high-tech approach in Vietnam because farmers, as Peter said, simply don't have the money for such technology. But we also see that simple steps like employing raised beds, spacing of crops, but also integrated pest management, where we try to train farmers in using less pesticides and more effectively which benefits not only the farmer but also, of course, the environment and also the eventual produce, can have a lot of effect.
Yeah. Well, these are interesting lessons learned, and of course, the Mekong Delta region is a tropical lowland region. U.S. East-West Seeds are, of course, active in multiple countries in Southeast Asia, with also having regions with similar climate conditions as in the Mekong Delta region. Do you envision that these lessons learned from Vietnam can also be deployed in other markets in Southeast Asia?
Very much so. It's very interesting if you work in a region and not only one country to see what developments are. And in general, Vietnam farmers are maybe a little more innovative than maybe farmers in other countries. So we can also, by looking at the Vietnamese market, predict what will happen in other countries. Like the openness also to protected cultivation, but also focus on quality, the awareness of the public for safe vegetables with less pesticide residue is very relevant for us. For us in particular, as a seed company, we can use varieties that are suitable for a tropical region in another country for use in Vietnam. Like, for example, we have introduced true seed shallots in Vietnam, which means that farmers can produce shallots from seeds and not from bulbs. It's a quicker process, and it also takes much less storage to store the seeds instead of the bulbs. And we import these seeds from other regions like Indonesia or Thailand or India. And it means that we can use our R&D developments to the best use also in other countries.
Okay, thank you, Maaike. Turning to you, Peter. So you are active since last year in Vietnam. Can you share a bit about the ambitions for the coming, let's say, 5 years with your partnership? What do you hope to establish?
At least we hope that we have then at least 20 to 30 Dutch members and 50 to 100 members in Vietnam. So that's our goal, that a lot of companies are joining us, and that we have done then 5-6 projects who really bring the horticulture to the next level, what I was talking about, every year. So, and that we as Dutch companies has good relations with the Vietnamese companies, and that for us it will be a good market. And it's for us the same reason as what you mentioned, why we choose Vietnam. It's a country that with big growth, economic growth, and enthusiastic government, and people who has opportunities to do better as what they do now. And if it's possible, of course, then we can copy it to other regions, other countries also. Yeah. But we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Which countries in Southeast Asia are you eyeing to?
Now,
Philippines,
probably Thailand or
Thailand,
Philippines. Yes, that kind of countries. Yeah.
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 All right. Maybe as a last question, Maaike, having all this experience in Vietnam as an organization, what would be your key recommendations for other Dutch companies who would like to engage in Vietnam?
Well, key recommendation would, I think, always be to work with local people, local staff, invest in local staff, invest in them so you build also loyalty and they will stick around for a long time. What's interesting in Vietnam is that there's a lot of women in leadership roles, and we see that they are also very successful in leadership teams. So that's maybe an eye-opener for many Dutch companies to invest in that. But also, as I said, trying to partner up with both local governments, maybe farmer unions, team up with the Dutch embassy and the Dutch consulate and other Dutch companies makes you stronger and potentially more successful in still a challenging country.
Well, thank you both for joining us here today during this webinar. A few key takeaways, I would say, Vietnam and especially the Mekong Delta region, very interesting region to do business, also for Dutch companies. I think East-West Seeds, having a long experience in this region, is doing a great job in working with farmers and other stakeholders. Also respect to the platform, Peter, you are chairing. I do hope that you will be successful also the years ahead, and we might see you also in other markets in Southeast Asia. For the time being, I would like to thank you both and also the audience in Southeast Asia for joining during this webinar today. We also would like to thank the Dutch embassies, the Netherlands Enterprise Agency for organizing this webinar. Wishing you all good luck during the remaining of the virtual mission to Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it was an interesting view from two companies who are much involved in the Mekong Delta and in the Vietnam policy about horticulture. And they both stipulated that bringing the horticulture and horticultural sector on a higher level. And for that, you need also control over the water, control over the logistics systems, and to work together with the local staff. I think that is very interesting. And now we are going to block number 3 of this webinar, is the financing. And I first want to give an information about a short film we will show about the Sustainable Development Goals Partnership by the RVO, the Dutch organization who is involved with foreign aid, foreign trade.
In Nederland voelen we meer dan ooit de noodzaak om te werken aan een duurzame toekomst. Samen met het ministerie van Buitenlandse Zaken en onze ambassades ondersteunt de Rijksdienst voor Ondernemend Nederland ondernemers die zowel duurzaam als winstgevend willen zijn. Juist in landen waar kansen en risico's groot zijn.
In the past 20 years, Vietnam has really become an agriculture powerhouse for commodities. So rice, cashew nut, frozen fish. For fruits and vegetables, this is much more complicated. And this is why we love it. Because when it's difficult, it means when you're able to do it successfully, you'll be one of the few.
Siem and I started the company in 2006. It was an exciting time where Vietnam developed very fast. We were a small company and we needed funds to grow. And we were lucky to find an angel investor, the Kloosterboer family. And we were also recognized by RVO. They helped us to get access to finance. As a small company, it's very difficult to get access to, for example, a loan from a bank. They saw the potential of what we were doing, and it really helped us, because without that, we could not have started.
We started our company with the main purpose to help smallholder farmers create jobs and make sure the environment is being protected. We've been doing this from day one.
Now we want to take it one step further. We want to make it more sustainable, have more impact and add more value.
De Fruit Republic is uitgegroeid tot de grootste Vietnamese exporteur van groente en fruit. Met meer dan 300 werknemers, waarvan de helft vrouw. Nu willen ze opschalen en de fruitsector transformeren met het partnerschapsprogramma Succeeds. Opnieuw weten ze zich gesteund door RVO via de Sustainable Development Goals Partnership Facility. Het SDGP stimuleert publiek-private partnerschappen die een bijdrage leveren aan duurzaamheidsdoelen in ontwikkelingslanden.
The whole objective of this project is to make sure smallholder farmers can still join in global fruit chains. To do this, we need to organize the farmers and we need to set up tools and systems so that the administrative burden, all the control and all the checks are going to be as efficient as possible.
We want to change the citrus sector in the Mekong Delta by bringing new knowledge to the farmers and making sure they are more sustainable.
All the changes that we need to do with a large number of smallholders is not something which a company can do on its own. So that's why we set up a public-private partnership where we're working closely with the provincial government, universities and several other companies and the national government to make sure that the whole citrus sector will come to a higher level. But we try to have an impact on the whole citrus sector, on which 150,000 farms and their families depend.
That's the beauty of such a public-private partnership. You transform an entire sector. I'm very proud that we did what we did. Yes, RVO really contributed to that.
Als RVO hebben we natuurlijk een heleboel instrumenten voor ondernemers die internationaal actief willen zijn. Voor starters, zodat ze een markt kunnen betreden, maar ook voor de wat gevorderde ondernemers. We hebben bijvoorbeeld financieringsinstrumenten, zodat ze uiteindelijk zeg maar, hun vervolgstappen op die internationale markt op een goede manier kunnen zetten. Voor ons is het ook heel erg belangrijk om in publiek-private partnerschappen te werken. Wat je ziet is dat voor al die instrumenten die we doen, dat de Sustainable Development Goals, de SDG's, heel erg belangrijk zijn. Dus in de criteria komen die ook altijd terug. En kijken we ook op een goede manier hoe zeg maar, datgene wat de ondernemers doen ook kunnen bijdragen aan een duurzamer wereld. En we staan klaar om je daar ook mee van dienst te zijn. Om te zorgen dat jouw internationale ambities verwezenlijkt kunnen worden.
Thank you very much. I can imagine that the participants of this webinar will have quite a lot of information they gathered today, and they will have questions, but we have only one block for introducing you. It's the block about the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development. And with this information, I think we can give also information about this part of the total Mekong Delta development plan. So may I give the floor to Alex Downs.
Yeah, there we go. Yep, good morning. My name is Alex Downs. I'm with SNV, Netherlands Development Organization. I'm the investment officer for the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development. The Dutch Fund for Climate and Development is a euro 160 million development fund. We focus on climate change adaptation and are actively making investments in agriculture, forestry, and water resources. The DFCD is supporting investments in concert with the Mekong Delta Transformation Plan, and we welcome collaboration with qualified companies in Vietnam, and of course also our friends and partners in the Netherlands looking to expand. If you have technologies or services applicable to the Mekong Delta, we welcome speaking to you, and thank you for joining this webinar today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's after all these introductions and information, it's now question and I hope also answer time. We have quite a lot of panel members who are now in possibility to answer your questions. I have seen till now one question on the, there are 12 questions I've seen now, it's quite a lot. First, I think I will start with a question or is for Ian Hamilton or for Willem Schouwstra perhaps. Can you tell me what the investments will be from the Vietnamese government, let's say for instance in the whole logistics system, because we can improve production, we can bring it to a higher level, but then you have to bring it to the markets. It's not only the local market, but also international markets. Ian, can you give an answer on that question?
Yes, so part of it, the logistics proposals that we were putting forward includes improved logistics. As I talked about, improved containers, quality control, handling, all of that would be focused on these large hubs, which would be located in provincial centers. So, I mean, the government would set up the framework for this, but we would invite the private companies to come in and actually run these, probably something similar that you have in the Netherlands.
Let's see. Willem, it's also possible for you to give, perhaps in addition to this answer, the question is also, what are they going to do with the channels we need? Because not everything is possible to transport by road. Can you give information about the ideas of the Vietnamese government about that?
Sure, thank you, Luke. Thank you for bringing this question forward. Yes, inland waterways and transport by water is indeed also a very, very important means of transport in the Mekong Delta. And that will also be a part of the integrated master plan that Ian has been explained of. So what we also hope from a Netherlands point of view is also to see how we can combine our efforts with the private sector, with knowledge institutes, but also with the government, to also see to agro-logistics. And for example, we have a PIB, a group of Dutch companies that are working on inland waterways. So they are also very much engaged in our integrated approach for this Mekong Delta. And also for the future, I think this can also lead to further opportunities for Netherlands companies to see how we can support transport by water.
Yes, okay. I had some problems with the connection. So thank you Willem very much. I have seen quite a lot of questions. If it is possible to give the presentations to the members of the webinar. And I didn't ask them, but I think it's possible to send them to them by mail or another way of giving information about all the introductions which were made today. I think that's also very important because every entrepreneur wants to know what the possibilities are for their future. Let's see if there are questions at this moment. Who wants? Many have asked questions about the supply chain. Can you tell me, Ian, about the ideas of the government, Vietnamese government, and perhaps it's also a question for other members of the panel for the value-added services, because when the production is growing, there will be a market, but perhaps it's not the only possibility. It's also the market for export, and for that you need what the ambassador already said: warehouses, schoolhouses, but also value-added production. Is that also one of the possibilities in the Vietnamese plans? I will see who will give the answer. Perhaps it's possible by Willem or by Ian or by somebody else.
Yeah, Luke, let me start, and maybe some others can take over. For those who don't know me, actually, my name is Willem Schouwstra, the Agricultural Counselor of the Netherlands Embassy to Vietnam and also to Thailand. Added value, actually, like Siba already presented in his presentations, is I think one of the key challenges for Vietnam. What we see is that they produce a lot of commodities, but the price they get is still reasonably low due to low quality. Especially now also with the EVFTA, a free trade agreement between the European Union and Vietnam that has been recently got into place, I think is also an extra boost for Vietnam to increase in their quality and also add value to their products. And I think if you take that into account, Dutch enterprises with their knowledge, with their experience, with innovative power, I think can also partner up with Vietnamese companies to see how we can add this value to the products. Siba, do you want to add something to that?
Yes. I think the Vietnamese are entrepreneurial enough to invest in, there was a question a bit about the cold chain and processing facilities. As you saw for the shrimps, I think there's even an overcapacity of 500 good factories. And these are factories which are really at a high level, which you will not find easily in Europe. These are very modern factories, 5,000 people working there, having all certification. So I think for investments in cold chain and processing, there is enough entrepreneurial capacity in Vietnam, but the infrastructure is crucial. If you, for example, look to send a reefer container from Vietnam to Rotterdam, it costs about $1,200, $1,400, but to send a container from Con Tum by truck to the Ho Chi Minh City port, it takes about $800, $900. So And then all this road transport is going through Ho Chi Minh City, leading to congestion. And well, I was driving the Nguyen Van Ling in District 7 this week, and you see they're repairing the road again and again. So having a good container terminal in the Mekong Delta, so you don't have to go to Ho Chi Minh City, that would save a lot of cost. And that will make Vietnam also, that will help to put margin in the chain. So I think that's something which, yeah, can only be done by the government to develop this. There's been a lot of investment by the government in airports. Almost every town is getting an airport, but there's no good seaport in the Mekong Delta.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. I do also have some questions about the vegetables and the horticultural residuals. They also can be used for providing energy. There's a biomass atlas of the Mekong Delta, which one can drive to quite a lot of megawatts could be generated, and are there also plans for things like that in the Mekong Delta? Ian, perhaps you can give the answer.
Yes, so it's one thing is biomass. We looked at that. That is potential for the future. We also see a lot of potential for other types of power, such as renewables. Perhaps just coming back to the last point in terms of the government's support. So we've presented these ideas. So the higher values, the value added, the transport. We've presented these ideas to all of the provinces, all of the key ministries over the last 4 or 5 months, and we've really discussed this in quite detail with them, and they're very supportive. So I believe that the government is fully behind this. You know, there may be some differences about some of the individual projects, but the overall strategy, I think they're very supportive, and that they will come through in the future and develop this in some detail and approve this plan by the end of the year, so that it'll be ready for next year to be implemented. Thank you.
Luke, maybe I can add 2 sentences on this one,
Okay.
because tomorrow we have a specific webinar on circular and waste. So for those who are interested in that specific topic, they are mostly invited also to participate tomorrow in the webinar, where we will specifically pay attention to that item.
Okay, then I have a question from Gerrit Groeneveld. Is the public-private partner law sturdy enough for getting private investors interested, especially for agricultural industry? Perhaps is it possible to give an answer by Alex Downs or someone else?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to answer. I think one thing I would definitely encourage is for people to join, you know, the Dutch networks and start to form the connections. And I think it's, you know, even in the COVID era, it's great to leverage these networks and keep building business. So this is one way forward. And I think for the PPP structures, the Dutch fund certainly is an area where we would look to be active. And I think there is, on the Netherlands side, a lot of really good companies with great technologies. I think, you know, it would be great to connect and kind of build towards a common vision.
Okay. May I also ask a question which is also on the answering list of the question list, is the SDGP, dus the Sustainable Development Goals program, open for Vietnam? And since when, and to whom the entrepreneurs have to take the information? It's perhaps something, yes, for Kieskamp or for you.
I can pick up this question. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we had 2 tender rounds in 2018 and 2019, and we're now actually waiting for another round. So currently the tender is closed, but we're having discussions now with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands to see how we can develop a 3rd tender. But there might be indeed changes, like which countries, like prioritize certain countries or certain themes. So unfortunately, I cannot say much about that, but we're definitely having discussions, and yeah, good hopes and fingers crossed for Vietnam to stay included in the program.
Yeah.
Eentje over opslag van water in bassins.
Yes, there's also a question about the storage of water in bassins, because the Mekong has quite a lot of dams in it, in China and in Laos, Vietnam, and in Cambodia. This gives a difficulty for controlling the water in the Mekong. Can you tell me something about a project which is in the total plan of the Vietnamese government for storage water? Perhaps it's something for I think Ian, or for you, Alex.
I can answer. We're not proposing any large-scale storage of water at this stage. Maybe some smaller storage. We're also proposing that we take, for example, drinking water to some of the coastal provinces that are suffering drought, but no large-scale storage of water, certainly in the upper areas, is proposed in this plan. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I can just opine as well. I would say from the DFCD perspective, we are actively looking for potential water projects. We do know this is a very important topic. So we are kind of in this area looking and seeing where we can find the right opportunities. And we're happy to work with Dutch companies on this as well.
Luke, allow me also to jump in here, because one adding on December 3, we also have a specific webinar on agro water, where also water storage will be one of the topics. So also for those people who are really interested in a nexus between agro and water, they are also very much invited to participate in 2 days on December 3 in a specific webinar on that.
Thank you, Willem. I think that's important. And now we are more or less on the end of this webinar, because it's the first round of information, because we do have more webinars and we will have a letter of intent signed by Friday. I think it's important to realize that myself, I will be involved for the whole project in the Netherlands, and together with Willem Gerrit Stiekema and Willemien van Asselt, the two members of the board of the top sector, agriculture and horticulture. We will take care that the Dutch companies will have enough information and good contacts with the total plans of the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. And also with you, Willem Schouwstra, you have a very important role in this. And as we already told, we will found a platform for all the companies who want to participate in this plan. And for the end of the webinar, I will give the floor to you, Willem, so that you can give more information for the participants, also for the program which is coming up for the next days. I would like to thank all the participants in the webinar, and I give the floor to you, Willem, for closing this webinar.
Thank you so much, Luke, and thank you for your great moderation, and thank you also for your support to the Dutch
very much, Luke Hermans. I have been listening to a very interesting webinar. I have to say, a lot of things have been said. And I think the challenge now is to turn all these opportunities into concrete actions. We are very happy to take you on board the coming days in further business webinars, where we will also bring you in contact in more detail about the opportunities in the Delta, and also to bring you in contact with Vietnamese entrepreneurs, Vietnamese knowledge institutes, to further discuss the challenges in the Delta. And of course, we as an embassy are happy to follow up to this webinar when you have any questions or ideas to come to the Delta, or to start business, or share your technologies here in the Delta. So I hope to see you all virtual or later on physically here in the Delta, and to bring this challenging cooperation forward, also with real concrete business, because in the end, business is in the lead to make a transition really happen. Thank you, Mr. Luke.
Het was lief op je afgespeeld.